Hello, everybody. Do we have Lars? Yes, we have everyone. So, um, this is our first live stream. And we are live. I was just hearing myself back through the actual YouTube video. Anyways, thank you for watching, if you are watching, in fact. This is the live stream of Uniform about our product Meetup, as you can see here in the corner. And so I am joined by Lars and Cam, our two wizards of personalization and code and cool stuff. So in this Meetup, we actually want to go and talk about like the basics of personalization, because we have so much stuff to say technically, but why not first start with the basics and then roll into it a bit later? So we might wait a little bit for some more people, but I think we actually have a bunch of viewers already. So what do you say, Lars? Maybe introduce yourself, and after that, Cam, and then we just rock and roll, basically.
That sounds great. Thanks, Tim, and thanks to everyone who is watching our first live stream. This is super exciting and obviously something we want to repeat week over week. So hi everyone. My name is Lars Petersen. I'm co-founder of Uniform, and before co-founding Uniform, I have been working with personalization analytics since 2009. And working with different enterprises, agencies on implementing personalization. And I'm super excited in terms of what we are building in Uniform, and also talk more about how we envision making it easier for both developers and marketers doing personalization at scale.
Awesome. Cam.
Hi, I'm Cam Figge. I'm a veteran CMS implementer. Have been working on Sitecore and other stuff since about 2004, and took a short stint on the Sitecore product team, built a bunch of Sitecore open source libraries that got pretty popular in that community. And now I'm here building Jamstack personalization.
That's quite the leap. And you know what? I am one of those who actually used all those tools, because you did like Unicorn and some others, and so it's super cool. Anyways, let's not talk about that stuff. Let's talk about personalization. So Lars, how about you share your screen and we kick this off?
Sure thing. Let me just, click the right buttons here.
Click the right buttons.
Alrighty, share screen. Here we go. And here we go. Perfect. And then let me...
There it is.
Perfect. Cool.
Yes.
Alrighty. So in terms of how we have architected personalization with Uniform, we want to make it as simple as possible for anyone who is using a content management system built on modern tools to do personalization. So essentially, to help drive personalization, we come up with this paradigm that you have a site or you have an app, and on that site or an app, you have different visitors, and those different visitors, they have different intents. So essentially, the mission of Uniform for personalizing experiences is identifying in real time what is the intent of the visitor you have on your site now. And of course, as you scale out and have millions of visitors, we need to do all of that in real time. So the first thing we really need to focus on is identifying intents. So an example would be, we have a fictive conference website, and on that fictive conference website, we might have visitors that have the intent for marketing talks. We have other visitors that have an intent to speak at the conference. So they are essentially reacting for call for papers, etc. And it could also be you have other visitors that have the intent of wanting to attend the conference, but primarily focused on developer talks. So first of all, what is the intent of the visitors? The way we identify what is the intent of a visitor is through signals. So for instance, if we look at the folks that have the intent to submit a talk, there could be different signals identifying that this is in fact someone with that intent. But not all signals are equally important. So you could have some signals that have a strong strength towards a certain intent, And that means that if this signal is triggered, it's almost certain that they have this specific intent. Other signals are more weaker, but it's still a signal. And the more weak signal that essentially points to an intent makes that intent stronger. So we essentially have architected Uniform so we can identify these different signals, but not only identifying different signals, we can also set the different strengths. So an example of that would be if we have 3 different signals towards an intent of submitting a talk for the conference. A strong signal here could be you're coming from an email, and that email have a big call to action. Click here to submit a paper for the conference. That's a super strong signal. So that means that if you come from that, then we have a pretty good measurement for you have this specific intent. Other signals could be you go to the website and you consume content, and part of that content you're consuming is about speaking at the conference. So the more of that content you consume in real time, the stronger you have the intent of speaking at the conference. And a third signal that is weak could be something about the classification on the visitor. So it could be that you are classified as being a tech expert, and we know for the fictive conference website that having more tech experts speaking at the conference is a good thing. And the typical tech expert would also be more likely to turn in a paper to speaking at the conference. So when we make personalization simple, we talk about this paradigm of first identifying intents. And when we have identified intents, then we can begin to attach different signals to an intent. And then in real time, we measure what intent do you have a strongest preference for. And that's where the personalization starts kicking in.
So Lars, would you mind explaining why this is so different and so much easier to use than the other systems that we're used to?
Yeah, great question. If we look at personalization and how we have been doing personalization for the past 10 years, essentially at one end, we started with rule-based personalization. And rule-based personalization is where you go in and then you set up a rule. If this is true and or this is true and this is not true, show this specific piece of content. And typical a rule is bound to a component on the site. So that means that someone have to manage these different rules. And if your rules is also changing on dynamic factors like an email campaign or a new PPC campaign you are doing, you have to constantly change those different rules. Then you need to change it for the different components you have across the different site. So while rules is simple to get started with on one component, if the dynamic variance doesn't change that much, it quickly becomes an operational nightmare to maintain on a larger site, because you have to maintain it across different pages on a component level across the site, and then with different dynamic data that changes over time. So what Uniform simplifies there is there's no rules involved. Essentially, you set up intent signals, and then you use that along with content. And now Uniform on the edge does the magic of identifying what is the real-time intent of a visitor. And that real-time intent can change in real time as the visitor is consuming more content or sending more signals. And then essentially Uniform maps that to the right relevant content that gets personalized for the visitor. So essentially Uniform helps you skip that complexity of getting out of the rules engine and more have a semi-automated approach to it.
Cool. Yeah, that's my question, because I've been in projects where we started to make like personas that we could then attach to components, but then we had a lot of versions of those components based on those rules. And if the components were used in different places, we had to change the rules again. So it was almost not, the operational aspect of it was almost insane. So we never really did it. And that's why I'm so interested in asking this, because if it's semi-automated and it just calculates those points, it's a very interesting prospect. So yeah, super cool.
And essentially you managed it centrally. So you can set up as dynamic data changes, like you are launching a new campaign, you are doing a Super Bowl advertising for folks with a specific intent. You just add it in, and then the different places where you use that intent is automatically updated. So it's very easy to manage. So you get out of that complexity with operational overload to essentially maintain a site at scale.
Exactly, because then content management becomes the issue, where actually code is also complicated, right? So if you can take that part out of the equation, that's awesome. Sorry, I interrupted you, so maybe continue with your slides.
No, I think this helps set the scene for the paradigm we have around intents and signals. Obviously, if there's any more questions around it, I'm happy to dive into more details here.
Yeah, sure. So we've asked the chat if they have any questions. So I think once we go into a little bit more things that actually show how we do it, there might be some questions, because we have 14 viewers, which is awesome.
That's not bad for our premiere.
For a first stream, not
here.
at all.
Exactly, and we get to learn the tool here as well. Okay, perfect.
Exactly, because I've streamed for one person, which was me, for months a while back. So there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go into this.
Okay, perfect. So if I'm in uniform here, and essentially I have a couple of different things I can show, and then any questions that comes in, we can answer them along the way. So first of all, when I'm in uniform, I have the notion of different teams, and then a team I have different sites here. So one of the sites I have is this one, contentful demo site, and here I have my dashboard and I have personalization. So this is where we manage the different intents. So for instance, we can see that on my site, which I just deployed, this is the fictive demo site. It looks like this. On this demo site, we have a couple of different personalization scenarios. So for instance, if I click on a campaign that mimics that I'm interested in speaking at the conference, so now the homepage gets personalized. If I go to marketers, that's real-time behavior. If I go back to home, we see marketing hero kicks in. If I go to developers, I get profiled as a developer. We see developer hero kicks in. And we also see that talks begins to be personalized. So this is actually using search with uniform as a context on top. So we can see that the most relevant talks for me, by having the behavior of both the marketer and developer, is this Jamstack 101. And then it's different talks both in the marketing and developer area. So that's an example of the outcome, how we are personalizing experiences. In terms of managing this, here are my different intents. So we can see I have a call for papers, developer, marketer. And for instance, if I go into marketer, I have a signal, and this signal is behavior. So that means that essentially what I'm doing here is setting up the building blocks that gets integrated into the stack, the rest of the ecosystem. So if I go into, for instance, contentful, then I can use these different intents and signals to essentially attach it to content. So I know when I visit specific content, I get tracked as this behavior, which is a signal into my intent. If I want to create new intents and new signals here, then essentially I can go in, create a new intent, which could be thanks for attending the conference. And then here I can add X number of signals. So for instance, one of them could be based on a query string. Let's say you are sending out an email, and in that email link to the site, you pass a UTM campaign. So I can just do query string, and then we do UTM underscore campaign equals thanks. And then here I can set what should happen if this is triggered. We want to increase the score towards this intent. Here's my signal strengths as well. So I can set this to be very strong. And then I can also set if I want to do this for all time, just the visit, what's the trigger frequency. If we are in a session and we open the email multiple times and click, then it should only count once per visit. But all of that is controlled here. So as I'm building up my different intents and signals, that becomes accessible within the content management tools. So if I'm, in this case, if I'm connected into Contentful and I go to a page, my home page, which is the this one here, we can see I have different components. And if I go into the homepage hero here, that is where we have the different variants we are showing. So we can see developer, marketer, call for papers. And if I want to create new personalization to be displayed here, essentially I create a new hero. And I can say thanks for attending.
So Lars, while you're at it, I put on the screen a question from Robert about what signal types are there. So maybe while you create this content, you can actually also select one of the signals we have created for this.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Robert, for that question. So you can see here that that's how I'm mapping to my different intents, right? So the one I'm just creating, thanks for attending, is now available here. So as I'm publishing this, and since this is a Jamstack site, this gets built on Netlify, and then if that signal is triggered, it will use the signal strength towards this intent. And now if the visitor match this intent, this is the content we will be seeing. So if I go back to uniform, so this is my intent. I set up a query string. This is the free version of uniform I'm showing here. So in the free version, you have behavior. Behavior is that real-time behavior of content you are consuming. Cookie can be any cookie value. Event can be event value. So specific event categories, event actions, event labels that is triggered. Landing page is the specific landing page you are landing on. Pages could be you have viewed more than 5 pages. Specific page visited is another signal. Query string really opens the door for any inbound campaign. And then you can also create shared signals that are shared among different intents here as well. If I have premium signals, so those are more paid signals. So for instance, if I go back to my team and I have a site here, this is with the Content Stack and Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And here I have a Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which is a premium signal. So here it will essentially look up a connector to a Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And here I can see different emails that I have in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So what I'm doing here is looking up what are all the marketing emails that my team is sending out in Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and then I can map that to an intent. So if somebody is clicking from one of those emails, that serves as a signal here as well.
So can we have a look maybe how all this works in, like, maybe not specifically diehard code, but how does this connect to the website? Because maybe like right now, what we were looking at on the website, that was actually a Jamstack site. So it's a static site, but it was still dynamically updating itself. So I can kind of assume that people want to maybe know how that works. I feel like maybe would you be willing to show us something?
Sure. Lars, you have the site that you just set up there. Do you want to run through the Netlify stuff and I can just talk about it kind of along the way of how things work, since you already have the tabs open there and we can use the same site?
Definitely. Let me just bring it back up. Perfect.
But that to introduce that topic though, like that is a key difference between like the way that Uniform works and the way that almost every other traditional personalization service works, is that we're designed around the idea of Jamstack or static publishing. Like, we aren't pulling in any third-party JavaScript. We are entirely first party. We're storing the data in the user's device by default. So we're very privacy first. We're ready for all the privacy changes coming, the death of third-party cookies and that sort of thing. That is not going to affect Uniform whatsoever. And in fact, because of the way that we do this, the intents and signals, what we do is when you click publish, like Lars, if you do a publish there in the dashboard. So like click on that on the publish there where it's last published a week ago.
There we go.
Like back in the dashboard there. Like there's a link next to published.
Ah, yeah, sorry.
Click that. So basically what we do is we actually publish we call this the intent manifest. This is the data that defines the intents and signals that you use. And we basically publish it out to an S3 bucket. So this data then is pulled into your app at build time. You don't absolutely have to do that, but that's the way that we encourage people to do it, is to pull that manifest into your app at build time. And that lets you run the personalization completely independent of anything we run. So like if Uniform is down or you're not at all dependent on our systems. Like the only system that matters to run personalization is that your site is deployed and your site is working. And because of that, it's very Jamstack friendly and it's extremely fast. Like we don't have to hit any origin. We don't have to load any JavaScript outside your own standard bundles to actually execute this personalization. And the effect on the bundle size is actually very, very small. I think it's about 6 or 8K for the tracker that processes all this stuff and executes the personalization.
So actually, this took me a while to figure out when I joined our company. And basically, the one sentence version of that is all the personalization information that you have in the dashboard that you see now is actually stored in a JSON file that then goes into the bundle of your software when you hit build in Netlify, for example, which means we don't have to query Uniform at all to know about personalization stuff because you did that on build. So once I realized that one, it's like, oh, okay. So when we now have a tracker and we have all the information for personalization, it's just a match to see which score is highest, and that's what I'm going to show you. But it's all on hydration because it's all in your JavaScript bundle. Sorry, I just wanted to lay on that sentence because for me that took a little bit to get in my brain. But now it's there, and it's suddenly everything is so easy.
Yeah. And that's the publishing of the manifest is one of the key advantages that we have. I mean, I've seen, in my former life being an implementer, I mean, I've implemented a lot of different third-party personalization solutions. And, especially the ones that are server-side based, it can be 300, 500 milliseconds up to, even 2 or 3 seconds if you're doing a lot of heavy personalization with, very server-driven, server-side rendered stuff. And that ends up causing problems because especially these days, Google is pushing performance as a key metric for, search engine optimization now as well. And if you run into this weird inversion layer where your performance ends up being so bad that you're personalizing that you completely erase the benefit of your personalization by your performance, killing your SEO, killing your visitor happiness, like there's a definite split there where you need both. To make personalization successful, you need both a performant website and personalization. If personalizing your website kills your performance, it doesn't actually help you at all to personalize.
No, not even close. Shall we maybe have a look at how this tracker works? Does that make any sense?
How this tracker works.
Well, there's many ways to track.
There are many ways to track. So there's kind of 3 major ways that we start running tracking. One of which is to do client-side tracking, which is sort of the default and the most easy way to do it. And that works with React and Vue in several flavors. Like we support Next and Nuxt and Gridsome and Gatsby out of the box. But everything is basically React or Vue. And then on the client side, there is a very short load time. It's like 20 milliseconds or so where it does have to spin up and load things before it can render them. And so to combat that, there's two other ways that you can do that. There's also server-side rendering support, where you can actually do like a reactor view server-side render, which in the Jamstack community is kind of looked down upon because it is much harder to scale server-side rendering. It requires a lot more node servers. Even if you're going serverless, like the response times aren't quite as good. And so that's an option for an app that is already SSR, that will give you the markup already at load time in the browser that has the personalization applied to it. And so it has absolutely no load time. Basically, it's already loaded when it loads up. And the other one is we can do stuff at the edge. And so that's using edge compute resources like Cloudflare workers, Netlify edge handlers, to actually take your statically rendered site and sort of rewrite it at the edge time, at delivery time, with a very low latency to have the same effect as server-side rendering, but the same scalability as a Jamstack site.
Yeah, I'm totally into that. So before we dive into that amazing story there, let's look at Robert's question. It's like kind of like, if you have that manifest, how does it go into the code?
Sure. Let me grab some code here.
Yeah, sure. We could potentially show the Netlify build, because there you can also see it's grabbing it.
True. That is a good point, but I can't show the, let's see. I have not shared screen on this before. Can you see VS Code okay?
Yes, there it is.
Okay. So this
you
is
might
our...
want to zoom in a little.
Okay. Better?
There we go. Perfect. Thanks.
All right. We'll close this out. So this is our standard, this is our contentful for the CMS and Next.js starter kit. And essentially, it's the way that it works to download the manifest is we actually have a little CLI tool here. So we actually have a command here to tell it to download uniform optimized manifest download. You tell it where you want it. You give it your API key that you set up during the initial setup of your uniform site. And that will essentially grab the file for you. And then the default scripts just wire it in when you're doing, like the dev script, for example, has generate and generate intents run as part of it before it starts next up. So essentially, when you start up, it grabs the manifest. And then once the manifest is downloaded, then we're ready to go with baking it into the bundle. And then at that point, it's just an import in your tracker initialization here. And this file is longer than it needs to be because it's showing a few options of the way that you can do things. But essentially, all we're doing here is we're actually importing the intent manifest as a JSON file here, and then passing it into our tracker where we initialize it here. And this is essentially the crux of how you start up the tracker, just passing it the intent manifest here.
Yeah, so Robert, it's basically any action you do to run your code, it will download the manifest and put it in your bundle, basically.
Exactly.
It's that simple. And maybe you can show the JSON file, the intents.
Right. So the JSON file itself, it has an array of intents in it. Each of them has, an ID, and then the signals themselves are defined in here with their metadata. So it's nothing insanely complex. In fact, we have a JavaScript starter where we use this with a pure vanilla JavaScript solution. So no React, no Vue. If you're doing a solution that is not going to be a single page app that you still want a static generator, you still want to personalize, like this does run with just straight up, browser JavaScript without any of the fancy components and things like that we get when we dive into React or Vue.
Yeah, like what I really enjoy about this approach to it is like, even if you don't have like a CMS connected, it's kind of, you use this tracker, so it figures out your behavior based on those intent manifest JSON file, right?
Yep.
And then it just selects variations for you. And so I could actually just write some vanilla JavaScript. So it's, if something has 3 variations with intent text connected, I can just trigger something here and there to track me. And then certainly I'm personalizing all in my local JavaScript, which is pretty cool. That's a new concept for me personally. And so it's nice for developers because you can basically control everything yourself. Yeah. And then if you have a CMS, it's even cooler because then in the CMS, you can have variations of a component and add the intent tag that we have to track.
Exactly. And like the intent tagging, like in the CMS, you saw the when Lars was doing his demo, he was doing the adding an intent tag onto a content entry inside of Contentful. And essentially under the hood, this is what that does. Like you can get the tracker instance either from having an instance, or if you're using React or something like that, there's hooks or context or whatever in Vue as well. So you get a hold of the tracker instance, you can actually call programmatic activities on here. So you can add behaviors, you can add scores programmatically. So if you're doing some very dynamic stuff where signals aren't exactly what you're after, but you still want to track it using the intent structure that Uniform provides, you can do that programmatically through whatever you want by setting scores dynamically. And then there's also the event signal type, which gives you the ability to basically pipe Google Analytics style events into the tracker and then switch on them to create signals for different intents through the dashboard. So that gives marketers that ability. If you feed your Google Analytics events or whatever other analytics tool you're already probably tracking visitors on into our tracker, it lets you decide on exactly how you want to do that.
Yeah, so actually what I just realized, I'm learning every day. So a lot of projects already have Google Analytics set up. So you could potentially look at your implementation and add the local tracker to add behavior yourself based on those events.
Exactly. So if you already know what events you're
nice.
pushing into the tracker, you just make it so wherever you call, like whatever adapter you have to call Google Analytics, you basically push it at our tracker instance as well. There's like an add event. We have TypeScript typings on all this. So there's an add event method as well on the tracker that you can call. Sorry, function. We're not C# here. So you can add, you just call add event on here and you pass it an object that looks very much like, you got the label, category, and value, just like the events that you'd pass off to Google Analytics. So essentially, if you just make whenever you log to Google Analytics, you log to the tracker as well, then you can use matches on any of these. So you can say, where the label equals this and the category equals this and the value contains this, then that's a signal that adds strength to an intent defined by a marketer in the dashboard instead of doing it here.
Cool. So I do have a question, because everybody loves e-commerce nowadays, right? So there's all these extra things on top that we can do also with personalization. So for the Mag Hackathon or the Macathon, I don't know, that's a nice word. We did this super cool website, and maybe you can show that site and then talk a little bit about how we personalized it with all the products and the selecting of stuff. And then maybe at the same time show our like maybe in the console or something, the way to show the scoring, so people can see how that was, how that information is actually written down basically.
Right. So this is our mock demo site, and out of the box, the tracker, the starter kits will have console logging enabled, so it will give you a bit of information about what the tracker is doing. So for example, you can see what our scoring here is, and if I do an activity, like if I go to for developers here, the for developers page has this is powered with Contentful, and it has an entry inside of Contentful that gives us behavior, like it's tagged with the developer intent. And so when I am shown that content from Contentful, it gives me developer scoring. So you can see here in my scoring, my vector now has 50 strength in developer. And then based on that, we make choices about
Can you
how
zoom in
to
a bit, sir? Can you zoom in a little?
Yes, absolutely. That better?
Yeah, I think I can see it now. Yeah,
better?
sorry, I'm just also checking on YouTube to see how that looks, but I think it's more clear now.
Okay.
In the chat, let us know if this is good.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
That's okay. So then, for example, if I go to for marketers, we'll see more stuff in here. And our next release, we're going to have a Chrome extension that lets you also visually diagnose all of this stuff and see exactly what's going on, and figure out how things are changing, and let you actually even have specific scenarios. So if you want to set your scores programmatically, then you can change them through the Chrome extension as well. And so now I've got developer and marketer 50. So if I go back to the homepage here, you can see that now it says mock for marketing technologists, whereas before it was very generic. And that's actually something that we do with intents. Lars mentioned earlier what your strongest intent is. It's not actually just what your strongest intent is. It's actually what the most relevant intent is. So this marketing technologists here, I've got equal strength in developer and marketer. In fact, I have strength in both, which is the key thing here. And so we can actually tag content in Contentful like this marketing technologist hero that we're seeing here with more than just one intent tag. We're tagging it both as developer and also marketer. So it's relevant to both. And because I have score in both, it's more relevant to show me this than, for example, if I clear my score by clicking forget me and go back to developers and then head back, now it just has a developer hero, right? Or if I forget and go back to marketers, like there's just a marketer one. But as soon as I have both, now it can figure out what the most relevant option is to show, what the most relevant variation is to show for my personalization.
So in the options in the CMS, you actually have one component now with 2 intent tags added.
Correct. So there's
yeah.
3 variations here. One of them is tag developer, one is tag marketer, and one is tag developer and marketer. And then you can also disambiguate between them, because inside the CMS, you can not only tag something, but there's also options of how you want to tag. Like you can tag this as being an override, for example. So if I go to, for example, shop and I grab an item here and add it to my cart, what this does is it's actually, it's programmatically adding strength to an intent called cart. So now I have 30 strength in cart. And you'll see here with my scoring, like I've got 30 strength in cart because that's equal to the sum of how much I have in my cart. So we're setting that intent programmatically. It's not directly through a signal. And then we've got 75 developer and marketer. And you'd think normally if I went to the homepage, I'd probably see the developer and marketer, the marketing technologist hero, because I have score in both developer and marketer, and they're stronger than what I have in cart. But that's not actually true, because the cart is set up to be an override. So if I have any strength in cart, it will give me this ready to checkout prompt. So you have a lot of options in terms of how you can manipulate when and where you want to show these variations based on strengths, including bypassing those strengths if you want to. And then one other thing that we did on here. Sorry, go ahead. What do you want to say?
Oh no, I was just thinking about, hey, you can also forget yourself, because this is a lovely demo site.
Yes.
I think when we look at the interest of time, let's have a look also at the commerce features, but maybe Lars wants to take that one.
Yeah, Lars, do you want to take over here and do the commerce and colors and things like that?
Yeah, sure.
Did we lose Lars? We might have
lost Lars.
Okay, let's wait for a sec. If he's not back, we'll just continue. I see he's
and
back.
We're back.
Hello.
Back in business. Yes, we're good.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. Let me share my screen here. Here we go.
There.
All right. So what Cam showed was more focus on how we use intent on that side. The side, this one here, I have the same. So a couple of things we are connecting. We are connecting content from a CMS. We are connecting that with content also from a CMS that is search driven. So we're using Algolia for these different lists here. And then what we have here is coming from BigCommerce. So that's products from headless commerce. So we have different listings. We have like this one, merch for the conference. If I go to shop, we will just see all the different products, but we don't know what the intent is of the visitor. So we just throw them in there, right? Same as if I go to sessions, we will just sort them alphabetic, because we don't know if you're a developer, marketer, and so forth. So as Cam showed, if I'm showing interest in being a marketer, then of course we see the personalization starts to kick in here. If I'm also a developer, we see a different personalization kicks in with the for marketing technologists, but that is also used to sort products. So now real-time behavior, if I go back to my shop here, we can see that I'm seeing the marketing technologist hoodie, I'm seeing the marketing technologist bag, the bottle, and so forth. If I go back to my sessions, we can see that those sessions that are most relevant are those for both. And if I go back to the home page, again, we see this is personalized, and we see this is personalized as well. So that's intent driven. One of the advanced use cases when you have these multiple systems is sharing data among those different systems. So what we actually are doing further here is that we are able to grab into a taxonomy coming from the commerce system, and we call that enrichments. So an example of enrichment when we are connecting with big commerce, if I go into my site here that is powering this demo site, and I have my settings, then I have enrichments. So enrichments are shared data among the different systems. So in this case, we are sharing product categories among the different systems. So that means that this is coming from BigCommerce, but it's also shared, for instance, in the CMS, in the search, and on the tracker we have running on the CDN. We're also sharing a variant, a product variant. In this case, it's color. So now we can take those enrichments and essentially add them into the mix, which means that if I go back to my demo site, where we ended up here, this is all based on real-time intent. If I'm beginning to show a preference towards a product category or product variant, like clicking in on the hoodie, that will give me preference towards the product category of hoodies. And if I like that hoodie to be gray, now I'm also having a preference in the color variant. So if I go back to shop now and I go here, we can see I'm seeing gray hoodies. If I go back to my homepage, again, marketing technologist, all my hoodies here are marketing technologist, but now they are also kicking in with, oh, it's product category and it's color. So it's gray. And then, of course, as Cam showed, if I'm adding this to my basket and beginning to click around, then we're also picking up on those events in real time. And if I go in and delete this from my basket, we can see that it's updating in real time here as well. So it's really multifaceted personalization that we are making super simple across different systems, because the management of this is super simple. But it's very complex personalized use cases we are showing here. It's shopping experiences, it's on Mac technologies, and it's across commerce, CMS, search, CDN, orchestration from Uniform, Next.js, etc. And it's super fast.
I feel like we
100s on Lighthouse.
Yeah, exactly. What can you run one just so we have it recorded? I'll remove the overlay so we can see it.
Now something will be 99 or something.
Yeah. Always the same. No, but like while Lars is running this, I'm thinking that whole commerce story we were just showing you, we almost can do a whole meetup just about that bit and see how we did that. Let me just remove this overlay for a sec. Okay, so of course this lighthouse is on Lars local's machine. It's we never know because he has other tabs open.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's going to be an average. Let's see. It might be a super high score.
I think I have too much going on here. Let's see.
Let's see.
80.
Oh, geez.
Okay, I have not seen it that.
Yeah, I've never seen it that low before.
I'm thinking modal.
You might want to go. Anyways. Well, look, if you see behind the pop-up, there's actually an error message that says there may be issues with performance due to whatever you have open on your browser.
Okay. I have an index DB.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. But anyways, I guess if you guys try this at home, you'll see different results. So let us. We can maybe put this in the chat, this URL. Let me see if I can find that. There it is. I'll put it in the chat.
And to be fair, this was also a hackathon project. There's a lot of things that we could do to actually optimize this template as well.
Sure, and I think having this is really good fun for our audience also to have a look at this, because you see, like, I've clicked around in this website learning about what we did for this hackathon, for example, and even now in the demo that Lars just did, I saw new things coming up with those use cases of the personalization. And what I love about it is also the fact that I didn't realize our uniform.dev website was personalized, because it fit me exactly. I didn't actually know. And that's, of course, the best use case, right? Hopefully that people will just experience the website as we have intended without noticing it's personalized. It's just for them. And having the technology that works so well, that's awesome. Let's see. So we have reached the 46 or 47-minute mark. We still have a bunch of people watching. Is there anyone who has a question or potentially something else they want us to talk about, or maybe ask? Maybe we can show some code. Let's wait for a bit and see if anyone has sort of a question or not. And otherwise, I think we're going to call it a day for our first live stream.
And I just did a new benchmark on a clean browser. I still have IndexedDB, so we can see it now. It's in the green.
But I'm still interested why it's not higher. But anyways, this is Web Vitals and all that stuff. It's volatile and complicated. How about that?
Yeah, I've noticed. I mean, even if you have something that's scoring straight 100s on your machine, like, it's pretty easy to bounce it around. You know, if you run it 3 times, you might get 98, 100, 98.
Yep. And then you remove a
what
checkbox
CDN
for
node you hit. All those
Exactly.
other things are very precise.
Exactly.
And as I said, that template itself, there's a couple of things. I mean, it looks like it's the LCP that's causing problems, and I think I know exactly what that is. And it's not due to uniform; it's due to some stuff that's in that template we used for our hackathon project.
Well, big images that load slowly, in a lazy way, can have a high LCP sometimes, based on how much waiting time there is. I think that would be a whole different meetup that we could do potentially about how performance works in all of this.
Yeah, that would be totally awesome.
Yeah, right. Oh, wait, there is a comment. Here we go from Sebastian. Do I get it right that information which is tracked about visitors is stored in client-side in cookies? Who wants to take this one?
I can take that. So it depends on how it's configured. It's pluggable. So out of the box, the default actually would be stored in IndexedDB. The starter kit that we have configured uses cookies by default because it wants to do support for server-side rendering. And of course, you can't read IndexedDB, your local storage on the server. And so what we end up with is, we're hot plugging cookies in for that. But we are also working on offboard storage as well as an option. But essentially right now we're defaulting to storage on the client device because it is, exactly what Sebastian just said. It is very GDPR friendly because it is exclusively on the customer device. We are not tracking this or scoring it, but it does have analytics support. So if you want to track your personalization, we push that off. We have a Google Analytics connector out of the box for that. But like everything else in the tracker, we make it easy to create a default tracker that has settings that will be good for most folks. But it is almost entirely hot pluggable. Like how it does storage is changeable, how it does scoring is changeable, the way that it calculates like score decay over time is changeable, and it has a whole plugin system that you can use to write custom analytics plugins, or you can use to do custom storage, or react to scores changing in different ways within your app. If you want to do different kind of reactivity, you have those eventing options by writing a tracker plugin, which is a pretty simple interface to do.
Yeah, I just want to say everything is a plugin in the system. So all the stuff we built are also plugins. It's like the Webpack approach where everything is a plugin. I love that.
Like even the cookie signal or query string signal, like those are plugins that load in and use our standard plugin architecture. So there's pretty extreme options for changing this to be the way you want, or configuring it for your specific, regulatory requirements or whatever that you need.
Yeah, and the beauty of it as well By the way, I just removed all my data I have in local IndexedDB that it was complaining about, and then we have good Lighthouse. But in terms of privacy, etc., you actually have the options to run it fully privacy first, because your users own their data. So you can essentially borrow that data in real time, but that data doesn't have to leave your user's device. Obviously, you can save it to other collection, and then you can have the right consent in order to do so. That of course the users have to accept, and you have to comply if they accept it, or if they don't accept it, then you can store it somewhere else. But you have the option to create something that is fully privacy first, where you just tap in, borrow the data that is on the user's device, and then you personalize the experience based on that without focusing on getting all that data into different databases and collections, stuff like that. So if you really want to go the full line and be fully compliant and privacy first, you can do it. That's the beauty of how it's architected.
Yeah, and one really interesting trick actually is even if you don't have consent to store permanent data on a user's device, you can actually still run in-memory personalization as long as you're using, a single-page app where you're not refreshing the page. It'll actually store your intent scores in memory. Of course, after you refresh the page, they'll be gone, but you can actually do personalization with absolutely no persistent storage on somebody's device at all.
There you go. So I don't think we have any extra questions anymore. Thank you, Sebastian, for that one. It allowed us to talk a little bit about that, GDPR related stuff. That's awesome. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to discuss, or shall we wrap up for the day? Well, for me, it's end of the day. For you guys, it's just starting.
I got bugs to fix.
Exactly. Okay. I don't think we're going to get any questions anymore. Lars, maybe what we can do is one last thing to say, if people are still watching. The easiest way to get started with Uniform, if you're interested after the stream, maybe Lars, you can show like the simplest guide, or we can share a URL also. Maybe you want to share your screen.
Yeah, definitely. Let me just do that again here. Share. Okay. So in terms of getting started, there's a couple of things you can do to get started. Are you able to see my screen?
There we go.
Okay, perfect.
But you're still on your.
There we go. Now we have it.
Okay, perfect. So one way to get started, if you go to uniform.app, sign up for uniform.app, and then you will get a team. And in that team, you can essentially create a new site. So if I call this stream, here you have option. You can start from scratch, where you essentially are connecting the different tools, or you can deploy a starter. And if you start with deploying the starter, you essentially select your stack here. And as you select your stack, that will connect to the CMS, to the CDN. It will get you set up with the starter site we have based on these different static site generators. And then if you also have analytics, you can wire in the code, the token there from Google Analytics. So try it yourself. It takes 10 minutes to get a site up and running. The other part of getting started, we have let me do this. We have a board game we use, and this is more for the strategy part of what should you actually personalize for who, and what are the different signals. So the intention here is that we focus on what are the different top intents we are personalizing for. Then for each intent, we map out what are the different signals that will help us map according to this intent. We also set the personalization objective. What are we actually trying to achieve with personalization? What is the strategic objective, our business objective with this? Once we have this laid out, then we, for folks with this intent, we essentially identify the different journey stages that they go through. So that could be awareness, research, onboarding, etc. And for each of those stages, we highlight what is the objective of that stage. So if you have someone in the awareness stage, most likely they're not ready to buy the service from you or talk with sales if it's more business to business. But the stage objective for your site might be to get them to consume more content or watch a specific video. And as we go further in the journey, it might be much more transactional. You sign up, you complete this form, you do these different actions, things like that. So when we have this frame with journeys and objectives, then we can start to map out interactions. And the interaction essentially what is the personalized content. So this could be specific content that we want to show for folks with this intent. Could also be different transactional goals that we want to track, that we have this sales form completed, but the way we present the sales form is much more appealing to folks with a specific intent. So once we have filled out this frame here, we have a really good understanding about what content do we need to present across the different journey stages to folks with a specific intent. And then we can start going from strategy to enabling it with the different technologies that we are using. So I hope
we need to play this game. I'd love to try that, actually. I wish I had that when I worked at agencies.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's fun doing with different stakeholders from the business, because they also, it's healthy discussions to have with those different stakeholders, right? Because we all know who we are targeting, we all know our objectives, but the journey to actually get there, that is cluttered for many. And now we make it more actionable by showing specific content that should be relevant for those users. And then obviously that is what we need to turn into personalization.
Awesome. That is the perfect bombshell to end this stream. Thank you very much, Cam and Lars, for all this super insightful stuff. And we still have 8 people watching, which is super nice for our first stream. So thank you all for the people that are watching, even though you might work at Uniform. We realize that. But thank you very much for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. I will put on our thank you for watching slide for like a minute. And there it is. First stream in the bag. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you so much.